Hey, my name is Melinda Russell, and I am obsessed with telling the stories of women involved in motorsport, young and older, from all walks of life, currently involved in a wide range of roles or sharing their stories from the past. I'm a wife, mother of 4 adult children, and a mama of 16. In 2017, I was searching social media for a group dedicated to women in motorsports. When I didn't find what I was looking for, I posted a message to a few racing pages to see if any women would like to connect with me. And now I have thousands of women and men who are part of the Women's Motorsports Network. As crew chief of the only media company dedicated to women in motorsports, I work from wherever my travels take me, publishing this podcast, the Women's Motorsports Network News online magazine, and Let's Talk Racing Live, my social media show. You will hear from women who share their stories from the grid of life, how they manage the messy and memorable moments of family, work, and racing. You will hear their tried and true secrets of success, and many other topics like friendships, family, hardships, and heroes that women deal with to balance the seasons of life. So grab your favorite beverage, pull up a seat, make sure you are comfy, and get ready to be inspired and encouraged from the stories on the Women's Motorsports Network podcast.
Are you a female in motorsports? GoFastGirls.com apparel for the race enthusiast empowers women to fiercely pursue their dreams in action in motorsports, instilling them with confidence and unwavering determination. A Go Fast Girls empowers incredible speed, unwavering effort, and success. Go Fast Girls has emerged as a prominent force uniting women from all walks of life who share a passion for racing. Check us out at GoFastGirls.com today.
Hello, everyone. This is Melinda Russell with the Women's Motorsports Network podcast. My guest today is Emily Heisler. Emily's going to share a little bit about herself and how she got involved in racing. So first, Emily, welcome to the show. And I'd like you to just share a little bit about yourself, whatever you want to share, your family, your pets, that kind of thing.
Thank you. It is a privilege to be on. I've been a listener for a while, so it's really exciting.
Good.
I am 27 years old. I live in Wisconsin, born and raised. I am an only child with 2 fantastic parents still with me. I live with my husband and our roommate and my cat, who is the love of my life. I adore him. And we, my husband and I are closing in on our 3-year anniversary. So that's really exciting.
Yeah.
Looking forward to spring, trying to finally be here so we can get to go racing. I'm anxious for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a little about me.
Well, congratulations. 3 years coming up. You look way too young to have been married for almost 3 years. So you must have got married as a little small child.
Yeah. Definitely small. I think I lied on my driver's license to say that I made it to 5'1", but all of 5 feet, and my husband is 6'3". So he gets the stuff off of the top cabinets and I get stuff on the bottom. So it works out.
That's so you are a tiny
yes,
for sure. Oh. Well, Emily, I'm excited to hear more about you and how you got involved in motorsports. So why don't you just kind of start at the beginning? You know, how did you get interested? Was it a family member or what? And how old were you? And just kind of go back to the beginning and tell us all about your journey in this wonderful sport.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't come from a racing or motorsports background. No one in my family was big into it. We weren't even NASCAR watchers, really. But, growing up as an only child, I had a few neighbor boys in the neighborhood that were my pseudo brothers. And, they loved to tinker with stuff. And, we would be taking apart everything we could. And I have a really, really handy dad. And so, we would be working on the cars at home. We would be going to car shows all the time. So I already had a love for cars as it was growing up. And so when I was around like 12, 13, my mom was meeting up with an old friend at Slinger Speedway. And it was the first race that I had been to, the first speedway that I had been to. And I didn't grow up in, there are lots of tracks all across Wisconsin, but I wasn't in an area that it was popular to go to the races or one that was really, nearby. Slinger was still a good 45-hour away from where I grew up. So I'd never been exposed to it before. And going to Slinger, I just fell in love with it. The atmosphere, people who watch racing on TV and make a judgment just based upon that, they have no idea. It's a full sensory experience. It's the sounds, it's the feeling of the engines, it's everything about it. And I just got hooked. And it started out easy as just like, oh, what's the coolest looking super late model? And I'm going to follow that one. And, getting myself into the sport that way. So after that, I wanted to go to the Speedway every Sunday that I could. And my mom's friend had operated a local journalism website for racing across Wisconsin called Wisconsin Asphalt Racing News. And so while he was writing all of the pieces, he had me take pictures for him. So that started out as, just taking pictures in the stands at Slinger. And, eventually it was like, hey, we could go to other tracks and do this. And so we went wherever we could go, and we would follow, the Big 8 series, ARCA Midwest Tour, Tundra, the Triple Crown, Mid-Am, and we would just go to races every weekend. And I would get to take pictures, and eventually I would get to go into, the pits and even the infield of the track to take pictures. That was always my favorite because there was nothing like the adrenaline of being in the middle of a race, having it go on all around you. So exciting. I got to do that for about 3 years. And after that, I was offered my first actual, paid racing job, where I got to be the series photographer for the then ASA Midwest Truck Series.
Okay.
And I was a junior in high school at the time, so it was the most exciting thing. Yes, it was.
Oh, it's a big deal.
It was so cool. One of the biggest reasons I'm like, no, I need a license and I need a car so I can drive to my races.
Yeah.
And then, I took auto shop in high school. So it was always cool to talk to, the teacher that I had always thought it was the coolest thing, having this, little girl who was in motorsports and taking his classes, and, one of the only handful of girls that really took auto shop in high school either. But I worked with the trucks for, unfortunately, only one season because they had disbanded after 2013. But it was such a great experience to feel like I was kind of standing on my own two legs for the first time. And the truck series was a really great starting ground for a lot of other young drivers too. Like the truck series is where I got to meet and know Natalie Decker. She was
Okay.
driving in the trucks at the same time that I was working with them. I've made some really other great friends there too. Camden Murphy, he does monster trucks, and he's done some NASCAR trucks as well. So it's just so cool to get to have grown up and learn with other young people and get to see where they go too. So I really liked my time with them. But once they disbanded, I was, trying to figure out like, okay, what do I do next? And getting to be in the racing world, getting to know that community, I really enjoyed the photography, but I also really liked all of the back end behind the scenes, what goes into making a race happen, seeing what the officials are doing. And so I had, through some connections that I had made, I interned with the Mid-American Stock Car Series in 2014. And I primarily learned about timing and scoring and, doing stuff up in the tower, but it was a really great Mod Podge of everything. I learned about tech inspection, race day operations. I really got to know the drivers and the crew. It was honestly, to this day, probably one of the best summers of my life. It was just so wonderful, a really great group of people. And it was really fun. One of the drivers with Mid-Am, Greg Beebe, he lived really close to me when I was growing up because, I was graduating high school at this time. I was still a pretty young lady. And so we would carpool to almost every race together. And, those are some of the best memories that I have. It's just, racing of the sport, fantastic. Love it. But the relationships that you make and build are almost even better than the sport sometimes.
They're priceless.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
But after that season, Mid-Am had changed ownership, and I was getting a little anxious as far as, okay, what does that mean for me? What do I want to do? So for the next 2 years, I did scoring and timing for the ARCA Midwest Tour, which was so wonderful. It was really great to tour with, the professionals of the Midwest. Getting to work under, Nick, their race director, was really great. Learning from their scorer, Lori, I learned so much. I still cannot fathom how, people like her and more scorers that I've met over the years can line score like crazy. Blows my mind. I am a computer scorer.
Yeah, for sure.
And getting to, work under the McCarns and see how they operate things was a real pleasure. And even just getting to go to so many even more new tracks. Getting to work at Gateway and Toledo, those were, really exciting, big tracks to be at. So that was really awesome. And then after that, I was finishing college and had to, I didn't have to, but I had an unpaid internship for my undergraduate degree. And so I just didn't feel like there was any way that I could balance having a full-time unpaid internship, trying to fit paid work in there somewhere, and trying to fit racing in. So I had stepped away, which was a really sad point, because, especially the racing community is so tight knit and
Mm-hmm.
small that, you know, it's not like you can just go on Indeed or somewhere and say, who needs things for racing?
Right.
It's about who you know.
It is.
So I finished college, I was, you know, started working full time, and, you know, just having, you know, this missing piece in my life. And and then COVID happened, so there was no real racing then either. So it was just, you know, this good 3-4 year stretch of not having anything that tied me back to the community other than, you know, going to some races as a fan, which is still really great, but it makes you just want to be in it that much more.
Absolutely, yes.
And so in early spring of 2021, I get an email out of the blue from this guy named Tim, and he mentions that, you know, he's the recent owner of the Mid-Am series, and he understood that I had done some timing and scoring with them before, and if I would be interested in coming back. And it just felt like this, you know, message from the gods of like, not only is there a space, but somebody's reaching out to you.
Right.
I couldn't respond fast enough. And it was funny because, you know, that was also the summer I was getting married. So I'm like, oh, I can't do this race, or because I'm getting married, I can't do this race because I'm on my honeymoon, but I'll do every single other one I can.
Yeah. And people understand that you have a life, you know.
Yes, yes. But also when it's race season, most of the life stuff also gets put on hold.
That's
you know,
true. That really is
I know
true.
plenty of racers and people in racing that would be like, get married in the off season. What are you talking about?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, so that season I came back with the Mid-Am series under Tim Scrogum, and as their timing and scoring person, and it was absolutely great. I loved being back with them. And in 2022, the following season, I continued to be timing and scoring. And, you know, just I can't remember which race exactly, but it was relatively early on in the season. And I had mentioned to him, you know, hey, you know, I like helping out in tech. I like being, you know, involved in whatever I can help with while I'm here. You know, I might also be interested in maybe learning about racing directing at some point if that could ever come about. And he's like, oh yeah, we'll keep that in mind. And I didn't think anything would happen with that for years, if, you know, maybe ever.
Yeah.
And by the end of the season, the position was open, and he had asked me if I wanted to give it a go, and I said yes, and I haven't looked back.
Yeah.
So last season was my first year as race director for the Mid-Am Racing Series, and we are just a couple weeks away from going into my second season with them, our 31st season in operation.
So, Emily, that's, you know, as I sit and listen to your story, one of the things that I think people will take away from it, and hopefully younger people, is that you don't jump into being the race director.
Oh, absolutely.
You started as a volunteer, you were a photographer, then you did this. And as I saw the span of, what was that, maybe 8 years or so in there?
Get with a couple of the years off I had, it's been a span of like, you know, 11, 12 years.
Okay. And so
actually
you went from
like racing, about like 8.
You went from one step to the next step to the next step, and added to all of your things that you've learned, and the things that you love, and maybe the things that you don't love as much. But I just see that is a normal progression And young people want to jump right to the race director job. And it's like, no, you've got to earn the right or the privilege to be asked to do that. And so I love that part of your story because, I just had this conversation yesterday with someone. She was talking to me about her employees, and most of them are millennials. No offense to the millennials out there, but
none taken.
They want to earn $100,000, work from home, and not have any of the responsibilities of the people who work in the office. And I said to her, okay, well, that's the problem with the generation, is they want the top job without all the things that come with it. And so becoming race director, that to me is so exciting because you're few and far between as far as women race directors.
You know what? Honestly, I'm hoping that somebody out there sees, the YouTube or listens to the podcast that is also in my shoes, because truthfully, I would love to talk to another woman race director. I haven't met or known one yet, but the Midwest is also, only one area of the larger racing network. So I know there's another out there.
I'm going to have to go back through my list of people that I've interviewed, because I'm 99% sure I did interview someone quite a while ago who was a race director, but she wasn't as young as you. How old are you, Emily?
I am 27.
So 27. So I'm going to have to go back and look and see if I can find who that was, because right now it's escaping me. I've done,
You've done quite a few.
Close to 300 podcasts, and I've written over 500 stories for the magazine.
Oh, wow.
So sometimes I can't keep them straight.
That's a lot of names to remember.
It's a lot of names, and it's a lot of things to remember. Where did they live? What did they drive? All those kinds of things. So
sure, anyway, absolutely.
I do have a list that I can go back and look at. So
that would be awesome. Yeah.
So what do you love about being the race director?
That's a tricky question sometimes. Sometimes, depending on at what point of the race day you ask me, my answers will be very different.
Okay, so why don't you tell me so why don't you first tell me, what do you do on, let's say it's race day, what's the first thing, what's your day look like? What's your day look like? And then one of the questions I was going to ask you too, and you may cover it here, is, you're a race director and there's probably 90% men racing, if not more. And how is that interaction? So take me through your day as a race director.
Yeah. So the average race day. So usually the night before, a few days before, I will, look at who we have pre-registered for our race, so I can get an idea of how many cars we're expecting, who I can expect to see. So that way I have a good picture. It's easier to just, check them off, register them in. I can start thinking about, how many heat races that we're going to have based on the car count that we're expecting, and start thinking about how the track also likes to set up the day. So once I kind of get my list for the day going, and I have my schedule for, the track schedule that they provide, because each race day is very different as far as how many practice sessions you get, when the pit gates open, when opening ceremonies are. So really learning your schedule to stay on time. I don't think a lot of people who aren't behind the scenes appreciate how much the track and series staff are trying to adhere to the schedule that's set, especially I'm sure it's everywhere, but it feels like, especially in the Midwest, our weather is so important. So whether we have to adjust a little bit earlier or later to, fit everything we need in case there is a chance of rain or something like that.
Right.
So schedule management, but otherwise, whenever pit gates open, that is when I'm going to be arriving to the track as well. So that way, if there are people who have questions, concerns, something needs to be worked out, because there's always things that come up during the day of, always extraneous things. So getting that ready, unloading all of the equipment, so getting the tech stuff all taken care of. Depending, I'll always go out and look at the track to see, do I have to establish a restart zone for when we're coming to greens, or which I would set up with like cones, or depending on the track, they'll have, painted lines. So I'll be able to tell just, okay, what am I working with? So that way, when I have my driver's meeting, I know what I'm talking about to the guys.
Yeah.
And so depending on how the schedule is, usually we have the driver's meeting before, practice and qualifying. So we will have our driver's meeting. So that will be between, our owner, Tim, myself, and our tech director, Kevin. So we will all just kind of take turns going through if there's any new updates, how many tires are you allowed for this race? Where can they purchase fuel? How many heat races are we going to have? Is there, where are we lining up for qualifying? Where's staging? Where on the track are you getting off versus getting on? Where are the safety people? So a lot of those little reminders. And, occasionally having to be a little bit firmer and say, hey, maybe there was some rough driving last time. We're not dealing with that. And I remember there was an issue of kind of jumping starts for a race or two of ours. And as I'm learning to call things too, I'm building my own confidence. So hey, you guys, the pole sitter controls the start, guys. Come on, we know this. So having the driver's meeting, which honestly felt less nerve-wracking than even doing this podcast, which is ironic because, that's in person in a crowd and everything. And this is, just a conversation.
This is just a conversation.
Yeah. But then following the driver's meeting, I will go up to the tower, which I will usually be for the most of the rest of at least our events. So I'll be up there for practice to see how the track is looking, make sure with our score that all of our cars their transponders are showing up on the computer scoring system, that all the names are right, numbers, etc. Because I'm actually really thankful that I had years of experience as a scorer prior to being a race director, because the scoring is even that much more important to me now. And I understand and can help troubleshoot it too. So super, super, super valuable. But then, once we get our practice sessions done, letting people know like, hey, maybe your transponder wasn't working. Switch over your tires, put on these stickers, whatever adjustments need to be made before qualifying. Then we will have qualifying. So I'll be up in the tower doing that also, which qualifying is pretty easy for me. There's usually not many things hopefully going on the track that need my intervention. Really the biggest thing, like with practice and qualifying, will be making sure that I'm in communication with the track safety staff and know who my counterparts are in the tower for the local track that we're working at. because we travel as a traveling series, while we go to the same tracks more than once in a season sometimes, we're never at the same place back to back.
Right.
So just adjusting to the new environment you're in is part of getting ready for your day too.
Mm-hmm.
But then after qualifying, we'll have our heat races, and our car counts have been really steadily improving. And so this past season, I believe we had 3 heat races for almost every race we had.
Okay. And that's really good because, a lot of places, a lot of series are not growing. So yours is growing. So that's great.
It is so awesome. And I do want to talk more about that. So I'll get back to it.
Okay.
But yeah, so and one of the things that we did that me and our owner kind of collaborated on too was with our heat races, usually it's just like even, odd, fast, slow. And because our series has a really fantastic range of age and ability, we do even, odd, and what we call the futures. And so the futures are the 6 slowest cars. And whether that, we also will try to tend it to, the newer drivers, the ones who need that seat time.
Yeah.
And, we don't want there to be unnecessary carnage, cautions, etc. So setting it up to benefit everybody and get them seat time with other drivers who are also learning. So that's been really nice. We've really enjoyed how that's been working out. And then we usually don't have any semi qualifier or semi feature. So then we will go right into our feature race, which will depend laps depending on the size of the track we're at. Usually anywhere from 25 to 45, sometimes 50. And that is when the real work starts.
For sure.
I swear I have adrenaline going the entire time as if I'm in there with them. One of the hard things about being race director is there is no job description, really. There's no training. You're kind of thrown into it. It's not something that you can practice outside of the track,
Right. Mm-hmm.
So I would really say, the biggest focus of being the race director is ensuring safety on the track. So making sure that, if there is a caution, making sure that that's called as soon as possible, while at the same time trying to hold out, because what if that car can right himself and just rejoin the field? So having to use that really quick decision making and stand by it, right or wrong.
Well, and Emily, I don't know how much you watch NASCAR, but they have, they should be the best of the best. Okay. And many times they're the worst of the best. And so, human error, human judgment happens in every series, in every track. And so those are the things you can't beat yourself up about unless it's continuously always bad. And
absolutely.
So, and you do the best you can. And, I'm assuming that most of your drivers are the same, like they travel with the series.
Yes.
So they get to know you and they kind of get to know that you don't hit the yellow immediately, that you kind of give them a chance to right themselves, and that kind of thing. And so I think that's important to mention because We just saw last weekend at the NASCAR race, they had a lot of issues. And
Yes.
it's been all over everywhere this year or this week. Every podcast, everything, everywhere. So, that has to be one of the most difficult parts of your job, is
Absolutely.
making that call and then standing behind the call.
Yes, for sure. And I would love if we had the resources to, have playback, to have all of our races recorded so I can see it. And some of our races are recorded, but that's usually when we're traveling with other traveling series also. So, and even if we did have them recorded, I'm not going to be able to watch that up in the tower to review. That's going to be something I can watch the next day or something.
Yeah.
So there is
has there been a call or anything that, and you don't have to go into detail if you don't want, but has there been something where you've really caught a lot of flack and you have to defend yourself because you're 5 foot tall and these guys are way bigger than you and you're a woman? And they, there's still the old man philosophy that, we don't know anything. So we're kind of interrupting the flow of what you're telling, but
no, that's okay.
Has something happened that you've had to really stand taller than 5 feet?
Yes. Yeah. The first one that came to mind wasn't as big of a deal, but it was my first experience of having to kind of stand my ground in that, and even just, deal with subjective judgment and what is the right thing. And my very first race, as race director, we were at Rockford Speedway, and one of our cars had spun out it was in the X, but it was kind of like, I was trying to do it on the camera here. Like here on the X. So it was out of the line of direct traffic. But if there were to have been another caution in turn 4, that car would have been in a dangerous spot.
Yeah.
So it was right kind of on that hair of, should I call it? Shouldn't I? It's my first race as race director. I'm, looking to the other officials in the tower, like, what would you do? Or would you have called it? Should I leave it? And at the same time, laps are all of, 17, 25 seconds a piece.
Yeah.
So you're thinking about trying to make these decisions in seconds because the seconds count. And I ended up not calling it, and it ended up being fine, thankfully. But the father of the driver was very upset with me for leaving his son in a potentially very vulnerable position, which I 100% see now, and I will err on the side of caution, of more caution in the future.
Right.
But, that was another one of those, like, he's like a 6'5" guy, and I'm this little 5-foot girl. And the driver himself, he was definitely a little upset. We talked about it. It was, we ended up being fine. And me and that driver actually carpooled to the race together that day. So I was joking, like, oh man, my first race, I lost my ride home.
Yeah.
This is going terrible.
Yeah. But they have to understand too. They have to kind of put themselves in your shoes too. You're there for the good of the whole, so
and that is a hard thing where, the unfortunate thing is there is no way that one person can see everything that is happening with every car on the track every lap. You just
Right.
can't do it. You have to pick and choose where you're watching. And yes, while you always are following the front of the race, because the top 10 is the most important as far as scoring and points goes, but also, allowing your intuition to be like, oh, hey, there seems like something's going on in the middle of the pack here that I need to keep my eye on.
Right.
And so the amount of times that I get asked, well, did you see this pass that happened on lap 12 and me and so? No, sorry. I wish I could say yes to every single time you ask, but I can't. There's only one of me. There's anywhere between 20 and 30 of you guys.
Right. So you don't have anybody else that's helping watch?
Not specifically, but this past season, I've made a point to ask each of the race directors at the track that we're traveling to, like, hey, would you mind being a second set of eyes for me?
Yeah.
Would you let me know if there's any calls you think I should be making, any tips that you'd like to give?
Yeah.
Just, whatever you could impart, please do. And for the most part, they've been very nice and helpful.
So does the flagman travel with your series?
We have not had a series flagman for the last couple of seasons.
Okay.
So we do have flagmen from some other traveling series that we tend to work with, but sometimes it will just be the track flagger.
Because he should also be watching.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
And that has been a learning piece for me too this year, as far as, things that I was almost putting more on the flagman versus myself, like, starts and, restarts. If he throws a green flag for a restart that I didn't think should have been a good restart, instead of, at the beginning of the season, it was more of a just, oh, well, he's been doing this a lot longer than I have. If he thought that was good enough, then I'll just leave it. Instead of, oh, hey, no, I didn't like that restart.
Yeah.
We're calling a caution and we're restacking it.
Yeah.
And having that own confidence in my calls.
Yeah. And that just comes with seat time. Your seat's just not in the race car.
Totally. Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. I would guess, though, Emily, that, as you travel to these tracks and, like you said, the same drivers pretty much race with your series. They've gotten to know you. And as they get to know you even better, they will know what you're going to call and what you're not going to call if there's a borderline issue. And everybody wants the restart to be good, you know? And so, yeah, for sure. Are you there? There we go. Do you see yourself doing this for a while? Do you love this?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's I hear it in your voice and I can see the big smile on your face. And if somebody's just listening to the podcast, I just want to mention that she's got a huge grin on her face when she talks about what she's doing. So yes, this is going to be kind of a long-term thing if possible.
Totally. I can't imagine not having racing in my life in some capacity. And it's really wild to still be at a very young age and feel like I have reached the summit of what I never even thought that I would accomplish. Being a race director was this, pipe dream of, a young kid who got to watch and see all of these behind the scenes and thought, maybe that could be me someday.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
to have been given that opportunity is so incredible. And I really love working with the Mid-Am series. Of all of the different groups of people that I've gotten to work with and travel with, the Mid-Am Racing series, they're my heart, they're my home.
Yeah.
And I remember, growing up when I was doing the photography, it was always, what super late model race are we going to go to? Oh, there's no super late race. Then what about the late models? It was always, I just want to be at the races of the, the top tier cars in our area. So when, I was a teenager, I kind of poo-pooed on the sportsmen, and I regret that. And, they're my absolute favorite class. I love our cars. I love our guys. I haven't worked with a group of guys who are so willing to help each other out.
Yeah.
There have been numerous occasions where, if somebody breaks something, somebody loses a part, doesn't have something, they'll be going to a trailer around them and asking, and they'll be getting the help.
Yes.
They'll help set each other's cars up. They will lend out tools and parts. We had joked about, our end of the season banquet having, like a tool return, because it's just so common for them to help one another out.
Right.
And even though it can be a very heated, competitive, at times not so companionable sport, for the most part, these guys love running together.
Yeah.
They respect each other's equipment, which is not something that we see in every division.
No.
And, getting some more, I love having both rookies and veterans. We have some people who have, been racing with Mid-Am since its inception, like Bill Preetzel and, Rick Corso. We have some of these names that have been in the series for decades, and we have fathers and sons racing. And it's so cool to have such a diverse group of people come together.
It is. Now I'm going to go back on some of the things that you've shared. So Slinger Speedway couldn't be a better first track.
Oh my gosh, no.
I've been to Slinger once. I'd love to go back. Great racing. My husband and I went there, and I was invited to come and set up like a booth for the Women's Motorsports Network.
Yeah.
And so I did that and watched the race. And there's a couple things that I recall about that night, other than the people were just, what can I do to help you? And what's this all about? And they really wanted to know what I was up to. But my husband and I both remarked about how nice the cars were.
Yes.
Like I don't recall seeing any, I hate to use the word junky, but I didn't see any cars that were like not attractive, I guess. The cars there were in pristine shape. They were clean when they came out on the track. They were beautiful. And so that's one of the things that was very noticeable about that track. And the racing was amazing the night we were there. And then one of the things that I remember, because I took a picture of him, there was a little boy. He was probably 8 or 9 years old. And he was sitting at the end of the bleacher, kind of right behind the flag man. And he was flagging.
Oh, I
So
love that.
whatever the flagman did, he did. And it was the cutest thing. And he wasn't, 4 years old. He was a little older, but it was like future flagman in training.
Yes, I love that.
Yeah. That
I
was
feel like there's almost one at almost every track I
yeah.
go to, and it just warms my heart because that I think flagging especially is probably the most front-facing official position that
Uh-huh.
does get people thinking like I can do that. And I
Yeah.
love that.
And it's one of the most difficult positions.
Totally. Yes.
I would never want to be a flagger because I don't care where you're watching. Something happens over here and everybody's yelling, but a lot of tracks
Yes.
have two people up there. But anyway, so I wanted to mention that about Slinger because I really would like to go back there, and it's not terribly far from Kalamazoo, Michigan. So that was one of the things. And then you were talking about the different tracks that you go to. So I wanted to ask you, like, kind of, where do you go? Where do you travel to?
Yeah.
Do you come to Michigan? What's kind of the area where the series goes to?
Absolutely. We are primarily um, Wisconsin and Illinois, and we have a race. I believe we only have one race in Iowa this year. So Iowa, and we're going to a new track in Indiana this year. So I'm
Okay.
really excited for that. But in years past, we've been to Michigan and Minnesota, but it's been some time since we've been
Okay.
out there. So I think that we are totally open to going new places, new states, new tracks.
Mm-hmm.
Like Iowa, Hawkeye Downs in Cedar Rapids.
Oh yeah.
One of my favorite tracks.
Very well-known track.
Oh my gosh, I love it there. We have some of our best racing there.
Mm-hmm.
I really love the staff that they have working there. It's just a great place. Great,
Yeah.
great place. And we've been really fortunate the last 2 seasons, and I believe this year as well, we've had Joey Gase come drive with us.
Okay.
And it's so much fun. He loves running with our guys. He likes driving our sportsmen.
Mm-hmm.
One of our races, with him, we had like 2 full laps of 3 wide driving.
Wow.
No cautions.
Yeah.
And it was one of those races that I will forever be upset that we don't have a recording of, because
Yeah.
it was one of the best races I've seen. And
Yeah, he wasn't very happy over the weekend.
No. I was
I
gonna
didn't
say
hear the penalties. I'm sure there is a penalty for walking down the track and throwing that. I haven't heard what it is, but yeah, he wasn't very happy with the racing that was going on there. But yeah, that's great. When we can bring professional drivers to local tracks, it's a big deal. I know
yes.
I have a friend who runs a series, and he's also doing some promotion work for Kalamazoo and some other tracks, and he's doing a really good job of bringing, like, we're going to have I just lost his name. He's from the east. He races in the Ryan Priest. So Ryan Priest is going to be here. Travis Pastrana is going to be at one of the tracks, and so we're pretty lucky that we get to see some of those guys. Kyle Busch has been here at Kalamazoo and stuff. But one thing I wanted to mention about the Sportsman Series, I know what you're saying. When you first get into racing, the sound and the speed of the late models, super late models, etc., it really draws you in. But for the best racing, it's the Sportsman Series. And my granddaughter races in the Sportsman Series here locally. And even prior to that, in Kalamazoo and Galesburg and some of the other tracks locally here, the Sportsman is 99% of the time the best race.
Oh, I'm
and
so glad to hear you say that.
love
It makes me
the
so
Sportsman
happy. Oh,
series.
me too. They really
Yeah.
are so much fun. And just the versatility of,
Mhm.
nothing against any of the other classes.
No, me
But
either.
at the same time, can your cars go dirt, oval, and road course?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Yeah. It's just, it's just you've got to get started going to the track and watching, and then you can decide for yourself, and it's not always that way, but it's more
Totally.
times than not. I love the Sportsman race of all the races for sure. Yeah, so I was glad to hear you say that too about them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and it's
Emily,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, you go ahead.
I was just gonna say, it's the Mid-Am series, we're going into our 31st season, super, super exciting. And, for a time, I was worried that, Mid-Am might not have made it.
Yeah.
Back in, after the 2014 season when I interned with them, the series had changed ownership, and there was a subsequent change of ownership, like 3 or 4 more changes of ownership that had happened in, the subsequent like 6-7 years. So, the car counts were really starting to dwindle. The
Mhm.
interest was going down. It I was really I was shocked that they were staying around rather than being gone.
Mhm.
And when Tim bought the series, he just filled it with so much passion and heart that it has breathed life into this series. The very first spring classic that we had after he bought the series, we had 7 cars show up.
Oh.
This past spring classic, we had 27.
Oh yeah. And
And
how long has he owned it?
this will be his 4th year, I
Okay.
believe.
So
So,
in a short time,
yes,
he's really
yes,
grown it. Mhm.
it's incredible. I mean, this past season, we had an average car count of 22.
Wow. That's
Um,
pretty good.
it's fantastic.
And that's a nice size of numbers for a race.
Totally. Yes, there have been a few races where, I've thought like, okay, if no more want to show up, that's all right, because
Uh-huh.
that's a lot of cars up in the tower to try
Yeah.
and watch.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
all
for
right. We
sure.
don't need too many more.
Yeah.
But I'll never say no to more cars.
No,
Never,
absolutely
never.
not.
But it's so cool, especially when, we will be part of events with other traveling series,
Mhm.
whether it be late models or trucks or sprint cars or whoever, our car counts are matching or exceeding
Yeah.
theirs. And for, you know, the generally a little bit overlooked sportsman, it's
Mhm.
really exciting.
It is. It is. So Emily, my last questions here before we let you go for the day. Um, I'd like to know how your family feels about your love and passion for racing. So your husband, is he a race fan? Does he go to the track? What does he do? And then what about your parents? You're an only child, you're their princess, and yet their princess is a sportsman stock car race director. So tell
Yes.
me, how does your family feel about all this?
None of them totally get it exactly. My husband is very supportive. He will watch, like NASCAR highlights with me now, and he'll watch, like the last 50 laps of a race. And he will go with me to the track when, his schedule allows, and, if we're able to make a weekend out of it. I have quite a few pictures of him at the track, like reading a book in the stands. So he is there. He'll support me. And he, especially like for our guys, he's able to, get into it, especially when there is that involvement. But I don't know if he would follow it if we weren't together.
Yeah. Yeah.
As far as my parents, my mom does enjoy the racing. She's gotten more into it. Sometimes she'll even text me something about a NASCAR race that I haven't even watched yet. I'm like, oh man. So it is cool. She's gotten into it. She will go to some races with me, which is always super fun to have her there. My dad hasn't gone to too many races that I've worked with or that I've worked at, but he'll go to, this past year, the truck series came back to the Milwaukee Mile. So we went to that, and, he helped me up growing a lot. He got me my camera that I would use to take pictures, and would help me with all the logistics of how am I getting there? How am I doing this? So, especially with, and while so much of it is love and passion and happiness being in racing, there is definitely a lot of stress with race directing, and it's none of us are exactly making money doing this. It's a labor of love. So there is a lot of, why are you doing this? Is this worth it?
Yeah.
And the answer is always yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Well, Emily, I have really enjoyed talking with you and hearing about your journey, I guess we could say.
Thank you.
To being a race director. I know that there's some young gals out there who want to be the next crew chief or whatever it might be.
Absolutely.
And, we're going to see more and more women in these roles that we normally don't see. And I love that. And I love the fact that you're one of them. That's pretty exciting. So is there anything that we haven't talked about that you wanted to make sure you could share today?
Yeah, our season is kicking off April 20th at Grundy County Speedway in Illinois. Yep,
I've been there.
Spring Classic. So the season's kicking off then. So for any of the listeners that are in the Midwest, definitely come check us out.
Okay, and how would we find, like, what's the website or the Facebook page? How would they find the schedule?
Yeah, absolutely. Our website is midamracing.com.
Okay.
You can find us on Facebook at Mid-Am Racing as well.
Okay.
And I have also recently started TikTok and Instagram. So you can find me specifically at the Mid-Am of Mid-Am.
Okay, spell that for me.
Yes. The Madam, MADAM.
Okay.
Of Mid-Am.
I love it.
AM.
I think that's awesome.
Thank you.
So that's Instagram and TikTok.
Yes.
That's awesome. I'm going to get on there and find you and follow you for sure. So,
awesome.
So fun.
Can't wait.
So fun.
Well, thank you Emily, so much for having me on.
Oh, I'm so glad we could make this work. And I really enjoyed talking to you today. So have a great season. I'll try to keep track and follow what you're up to. And if you ever have anything that you want to share or announcements or anything, you know where to find me. Reach out to me and tag me in your posts. That way, it's easier to see them if I'm tagged because I get so many I follow. So, that's great. The sun is trying to come out in Kalamazoo today, and then it was spitting snow. And then, so while I've been sitting here, the sun came out, it went back under. It's been a crazy day, but hopefully the weather's going to turn great and everybody's going to be able to enjoy a good season of racing.
Absolutely. As long as we got sunny skies on the 20th, that's all I'm hoping for.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. Well, thanks again for being on, Emily, and you have a great rest of your week.
You too. Thanks so much.
Sure. Thank you for listening to the Women's Motorsports Network podcast. Subscribe to my show and follow me on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube. If you or someone you know would like to be featured in the Women's Motorsports Network News online magazine, this podcast, or Let's Talk Racing Live, my social media show, contact me via Messenger on Facebook at Melinda Russell, or send me an email at womensmotorsportsnetwork@gmail.com.